Well, cozy up with your nuclear family and don't forget the champagne cocktails. It's Filmshake, the 90s movies podcast. I'm Jordan.
And this is Nick.
And this is episode 61, where we're talking about Blast from the Past from 1999. And Nick, do you know, I needed a champagne cocktail for something else we had to watch for this episode.
That's right. We came to a tie in the last trivia battle. I tell you what, Jordan, I'm going to just keep asking you that Waterboy director question because you just can't seem to get it right.
Tamara Davis, right?
I thought he'll get this right. It'll be over. He'll win. He won't have to watch Dudley Do-Right. I'll watch it alone. And you keep saying Dennis Dugan every time I ask it.
And I still don't remember the director's name. I think it was a Kalachi or something.
Close. I feel like it's starting to get in your head. We watched the punishment film together, Dudley Do-Right, and it's nuts. This is one of the weirdest things where we didn't know this going into the episode. Both of these films came out in 1999. Chronologically, Blast from the Past came out February 99, and Dudley Do-Right came out August of 99. Both have the same writer-director, Hugh Wilson. That's weird, dude.
And both starring Brendan Fraser, which we knew going in. But yeah, the director-writer thing totally blew my mind.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. Brendan, do you think Brendan Fraser really liked this guy, or do you think that somehow he just ended up in two of his films?
I don't know, man. He had a crazy year. We'll get into what I think about Dudley Do-Right. I was really blown away having seen Blast from the Past and liking it previously and knowing the reputation of Dudley Do-Right. You know, it has a, 3.9 out of 10 on IMDb. So I was just really shocked this was from the same person. But man, what a year for Fraser, starring in The Mummy, just classic all-time action adventure, and then these other two movies that we'll get in here. So I don't know. I guess he enjoyed working with him. Hopefully so.
Well, maybe he enjoyed Blast from the Past more because did you see who the producer of Blast from the Past was? Jordan, no other than Rennie Harlan. Rennie Cutthroat Island Harlan.
Yes, I did see that and totally forgot. And we should mention too that Hugh Wilson, famous for helping write and direct Police Academy, which was also just like, wait, what? These movies are from this guy? Oh, man. And yeah, produced by Rennie Harlan, Cutthroat Island Harlan.
And we should also say Hugh Wilson also directed a sitcom that my mom introduced me to whenever I was a kid, WKRP in Cincinnati. There was a gag from that show that she particularly loved where someone is talking about a horrible accident that's unfolding in real time over the radio so you can't see anything, but the details are so absurd and just pile on top of each other. That was one of the... I talk about my dad and watching people get smashed in King Kong and him laughing every time he stomped on someone. But my mom's sense of humor, I think about this crazy scene, which actually is pretty dark too.
So that just ensured you to have your own sick sense of humor.
Right.
Did you guys ever watch his other TV show, Frank's Place, which was set in New Orleans?
No, I actually have never heard of that. I have to tell you. Never heard of it.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it either, but stars Tim Reed, who is the dad in Sister Sister. So that caught my attention. But yeah, never heard of this show. Didn't really know much about Hugh Wilson. So this was an interesting dive for sure.
Now, I had seen 1994's Guarding Tess, which has Shirley MacLaine and Nicolas Cage, where he's a Secret Service agent who...
I've never seen that.
...has to watch her. She's a fictional first lady. It's an interesting film. There's something that I want to talk about, especially with Blast from the Past, about tone, but it's interesting. And he did Down Periscope from 1996, which my brother saw. I don't think I've ever watched it. We were both a fan of Operation Petticoat, starring Cary Grant. He wrote Down Periscope. I've never seen it, so I can't comment on it. And I've never seen The First Wives Club from 1996. Big shocker. A teenage boy, I just wasn't into that movie back in the 90s.
You weren't into Diane Lane's comeback? Just a teenager in the 90s.
It didn't bristle my whiskers, no.
No. This is interesting, too, just thinking about going into Blast from the Past, how this is a nostalgic watch for us being a 90s show, but that this is also a product of its time looking back at the 50s and having nostalgia for a different time period. So I think those two things will come together interestingly.
And it sounds like we're ready to talk about our main feature here, so let's get into 1999's Blast from the Past.
So New Line Cinema released Pleasantville 6 months prior to this movie coming out, which also released Blast from the Past. So I thought that was an interesting throwback here with these two movies, thinking about like the wholesome family values of the 50s and just the connection of those two movies, how they're kind of heads and tails of the same coin in a way, but with totally different messages. Pleasantville being the characters bring their modern sensibilities into this kind of archaic way of life in the 50s versus Blast from the Past, the reverse of that, but basically the idea of someone from another time changing the world around them because of how their values are different from everybody around them. So did you see Pleasantville? Just kind of touching on that real quick, and what did you think of that movie and how it connects here to Blast from the Past?
Yes, Jordan, I'm glad you brought that up. I have a note about that because I definitely see that parallel with Pleasantville, except obviously it's the opposite direction there of him basically coming into the future instead of them coming into the past. But 99, obviously I've gone on about it being my favorite year, but I feel like the 90s really look back at every other decade in the century because really it's closing out a millennium, obviously getting to Y2K, but the 20th century felt pretty monumental with everything that happened. So a lot of looks back in the 90s, but really with 98 and 99 particular, and maybe you can add some to what I'm about to say, but I feel like there was a lot of looking back at the 50s and 60s, which obviously 80s, you had kind of a 50s revival with Back to the Future.
Right.
But I feel like really 98, 99, you get things like Blast from the Past, or 50s themed worlds like in The Truman Show or like in Pleasantville, or you have movies like The Iron Giant in 99, October Sky in 99.
Yeah, that's true.
You have space age focused stuff like Galaxy Quest in 99, and even the alternate reality trio of The Matrix, The 13th Floor, and Dark City from 98 and 99. You kind of have this 50s vibe to them. And then you had the weird swing revival. Remember when swing music came back for this movie even? That was weird, right?
Right. Yeah. Really interesting reading about how the swing song where they're doing the jitterbug here became a hit, surprisingly. And let's see, what was the artist name? Something really 90s, like the Neutrinos or something like that. Like somebody you've never heard of. Just this one-hit wonder swing band. Mr. Zoot Suit by the Flying Neutrinos. Or Neutrinos. Neutrinos,
that makes sense with the nuclear age look back here. Yeah, there's a lot of, on the soundtrack for the film, swing stuff. There's this Celeste Prince song, which is a swing song. You have Cherry Poppin' Daddies, who were one of the swing revival bands.
During the club scene, yeah. If we're talking about the soundtrack already, you know where I'm going to go. Right, just give it a guess.
I do. Everclear, right? Is that where you're gonna go?
Everclear, I will buy you a new life. Come on, man. How can I not love this movie? Like one of my favorite bands from the 90s. Like I'm a hardcore Everclear fan to this day. Still think their first 3 albums are great. Anything after that is dead to me. But yeah, such a great song. Great montage song in this movie.
Yeah, I wrote a big note. Jordan is happy right now.
I was very happy.
Don't forget Squirrel Nut Zippers, too. They're in this.
Squirrel Nut Zippers, yes. Also thinking about the 50s movies, I just watched another Brendan Fraser movie to prepare for this, just getting deeper into his filmography. Watched School Ties, which is also set in the 50s, where he's at a prep school and he plays a Jewish kid. So it's just like, man, I did not really connect with how much the 50s were a look back in the 90s. Definitely, like you said, the 80s, I think, a Happy Days and just the 50s revival and everything. But Yeah, I guess it just kind of bleeds over into the 90s, and did not realize it was such a theme throughout a lot of these movies.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. That's a good movie, too.
Yeah.
My sister made me watch that because she had a huge Brendan Fraser crush, and I'm pretty sure she watched most of the movies that he started in the 90s, but that was a good one. You know, usually when your sister is going on and on about a movie because someone in it is so cute, you try to act like you hate it, but man, you can't really do that with that movie. It's great, and he's really good.
How can you do that with Brendan Fraser? Like, even as a hetero man, I'm like, yeah, he's pretty hot. He's pretty good looking in that movie. Like, me and my wife were both watching it. We're like, feel all gooey inside, Brendan. And he dances in that movie too. I feel like does he dance in The Mummy? Because I feel like every single movie he's in, he's dancing, and he's a damn good dancer too. Or I don't know. I know they use like a body double for Blast from the Past in the swing club moment, but I'm just like, I guess this is his thing. I don't feel like I've heard anybody talk about that, but he's always dancing in movies, and he looks very hip and very with it.
Yeah, Jordan, you're right. The crazy thing is, School Ties came out the same year as Encino Man, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, big dance number in that movie, too.
There is. If everyone listened to the last episode, I'd be getting even more into Blu-ray and DVD extras than I ever have before. But the Blu-ray for Blast from the Past has nothing. So I found these interviews by this kind elderly woman named Bobby Wygant. And she interviews Brendan Fraser, and she asked him about the dancing. First of all, she compliments him for being a nice, very well-mannered young man because he stands up as she sits down.
I feel like he must have learned that from this movie and from School Ties, because he does that in both movies.
Right. And she compliments his dancing, and he tries to act humble, and he's like, oh, I just have good coordinators. I have 2 left feet. But she kind of needles him about it, and he's like, all right, fine. Yeah, I'm just being fake humble. Thank you. I know I'm a good dancer.
Oh man, yeah, he's so good. How can you not love Brendan Fraser? He's very charming. And I also wanted to point out with School Ties, we have done an episode on Airheads, and I did not realize until today that his love interest, Kayla, that is such a bitch in Airheads that we ended up hating, but that he stays with in the long run. She is also in School Ties as just this sweet prep school beauty that he falls for, and she's gorgeous in that movie. And I did not ever really care for her trashy, grungy look in Airheads, but she is very, very gorgeous in School Ties. And I did not realize that he was in both movies, and both with those being his love interest.
She does look quite different in those 2 films. Agreed.
Yes, Amy Locane. Very good actress. I like her in both those movies, even though I hate her character in Airheads.
That just shows how good she is, right?
Yes, right? Yeah, and totally 2 different characters for sure. Actually, kind of unlikable in the end in School Ties too, but that's kind of a spoiler.
That's right. At the end, I agree.
Let's jump into some more Blast from the Past then. So this was the first time you'd seen this, right?
I never watched this. My sister did go to see it, and I had seen The Mummy that year. He had that big year with this, Dudley Do-Right, and The Mummy coming right in between those 2. And I love The Mummy. And I went to see George of the Jungle twice in the theater. I definitely like Brendan Fraser a lot. I'm not a big romantic comedy guy, and she wasn't really high on the movie, so it just never got into my you gotta watch this part of my brain, and it wasn't a hit. It kind of came and went at the box office. I don't think it made back its budget. Maybe some reasons for that, which we'll talk about. Okay, it did. Its budget was $35 million. It made 40.3, so it maybe barely turned a profit after the advertising, but it kind of came and went. Its Blu-ray has no extras, Jordan.
It definitely feels like it didn't get a whole lot of love, a whole lot of fanfare when it came out, but I don't remember how I saw it. Definitely not in the theater, but probably just like on home video with my family. We liked The Mummy. We liked Brendan Fraser. I hadn't seen a whole lot of his early stuff. Like I had never seen School Ties, but I definitely was a big fan of Airheads in the 90s and remember having that on VHS. So that might have been what drew me to this. And I don't think I ever really thought of it as a romantic comedy in that same way, even though it definitely is. But as a young teenager, it was more just, oh, this is this kind of quirky movie about this guy and his family. Basic premise, Christopher Walken, Sissy Spacek play these very suburban 50s couple. Christopher Walken is a mad genius type of character who went to Caltech, and he's an inventor. And Sissy Spacek is playing the very basic 50s housewife, entertaining everybody, cooking pot roasts. It's very satirical. You can tell right from the beginning of that whole time period and suburban attitude. The basic premise is they go into their fallout shelter in 1962 thinking, because of the Cuban Missile Crisis, that nuclear war is upon them from that whole conflict. And then, by happenstance, a fighter jet just falls on their house while they're in the fallout shelter, convincing them that the bomb has been dropped on Los Angeles where they live. And so they've set the locks in their fallout shelter now to stay down there for 35 years, because by that point, the nuclear or radioactive half-life will be gone. It'll be safe to go up to the surface. Sissy Spacek is pregnant. They have a son that they name Adam, who grows up to be the ever-dazzling, charming Brendan Fraser, who grows up in the fallout shelter with them. That's basically our setup from of the beginning. We can kind of talk about that before, I guess, we get into the rest of the plot.
What did you think about the setting in general? How we don't see Brendan Fraser to start off this movie. We really only have Walken and Spacek to kind of connect to, and everyone's kind of commenting that Walken is a little bit of a kook, and you can see his wife does seem slightly exasperated with him, just a little bit.
Yeah, I love all the gossip at the dinner party. I feel like first we get the credits. I feel like that's really well done. You have all the old-timey newspaper, real footage, setting up the time period, setting up the idea of the missile crisis and the Cold War aspect and the fallout shelters. Basically, I guess for 90s audiences, if you're not familiar with some of that history there, it's giving you a little touch there in the beginning. And then we just jump right into this dinner party with Christopher Walken, Sissy Spacek, and all the gossiping partygoers who are talking about them. I love how that sets up our characters, and we kind of quickly get an idea of who they are. We're cutting back and forth between Christopher Walken telling this really lame joke as he's making martinis about the duck. I love how he does this little snap. He snaps his fingers and he winks and he gives a thumbs up. He's just super quirky and over the top. And yeah, his wife is just kind of running around with the oven mitts on, looking a little flustered for sure. But yeah, I think the setup is beautiful. I like that he's an inventor, and you get all the playful nods to that in his house. And then, especially when we get down in the bunker.
I enjoy these parts of the movie. There's a part of me, though, that wonders, because I've talked to a few people about their opinions on this leading up to the episode. Inadvertently, it just came up in conversation that we were about to cover this, and they gave me their 2 cents. Do you feel like it takes a little too long to get into the meat of the film here, or that you need this long of a setup to get to everything?
I've seen some critical comments about that. Went back and read some articles from critics. I definitely remember people saying that, it's 45 minutes into the film and you haven't even seen Brendan Fraser yet, and it hasn't really kicked off. I mean, I can feel the slow build up, but I enjoyed all this stuff. I mean, I love Christopher Walken and Sissy Spacek, so I could have just watched a whole movie of those two really quirky characters. Christopher Walken I guess you could say he's dialed back from his normal mania in some of his other 90s movies, but he just brings so much charisma and so much quirkiness to this character. And I love how he's all about the fallout shelter, and he thinks he's trying to be so practical and helpful, but he's just a little over the top and eccentric. And how eventually Sissy Spacek is just driven to drink and making sure they have enough champagne cocktails in their stock and everything, pouring the cooking sherry into her drinks and stuff. I don't know. I love the setup. I love the little look into their bunker life. I find that really interesting and enjoyable.
You know what I think, Jordan? I agree with you 100%.
Good.
I love the opening of this film. Good. I really enjoyed all of it. I love Walken. I love Sissy Spacek. I love the set dressing. First of all, their house.
Yeah. Retro chic production and the costume design. It was apparently the same crew who worked on Boogie Nights put this together. And yeah, I think it looks really good.
Yeah, you could see that commitment to excellence just from that first shot of the table spread, really taking you into the world of the movie at that time, which it's 1962 is what we're getting into. The 50s have ended, and you've gotten into the period here where Kennedy is in office a year before he was assassinated, and you haven't got to the counter-cultural era of the 60s yet. So you really get this great feeling of the time, and then you get into the bunker, and that's really the only time Walken does the kind of crazy Walken for a brief moment whenever the plane crashes into their house as they're going down the steps, and they fly down there. She's, about 9 months pregnant with Brendan Fraser, and he freaks out for just maybe 3 or 4 seconds and does the crazy Walken voice. It's great.
My surface indicators, the heat. It's so good. So good.
Yes, I love that. And then you get really, I thought, very well done kind of quick takes, not quite a montage, but you kind of move forward every few years to get a taste of what's going on down there with the two of them. And poor Sissy Spacek getting very stir crazy, Walken kind of being oblivious to her stir craziness.
Right, completely. Like to much comedic effect, which is just great. I love their whole dynamic.
Which there's some good payoffs for that at the end of the movie.
Yeah, how he's just like, this is just like home, like I love it down here. And she's like, it's different. Believe me, it's different.
He was born for that bunker life, man.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like you said, the passing of time, the cross-cutting between life in the bunker and life above. I love all this stuff with the mom's malt shop. You've got the mom and her son, who's the soda jerk, played by Joey Slotnick. You see him grow up, and then you've got the 60s where it turns into a dive bar, and he's like this burned out hippie by the present day. And I just think he's really funny in this. He's got the little tattoo on his head and everything. He just looks giant beard and crazy hair. He looks awesome.
Joey Slotnick is a 90s all-star. I've talked to a few of our patrons about this. Just seeing him pop up in anything is such a joy. His biggest hit, obviously he's not the star, he's a character actor, but he was in Twister a few years before this.
Right.
I know him best from the sitcom The Single Guy that he was in with Jonathan Silverman. I just really like his presence, and he just gets to be so weird here. He just really gets to go all out, because you see him from the early 60s on to the present day, but you get a piece of him every 5 or 6 years as the movie, as you said, bounces between little kid Brendan Fraser and his parents in the bunker and what's gone on above ground, because they've left the bunker alone. They thought it was a septic tank or something and just built over it. And Slotnick goes from listening to his mom at the bar to the area getting so bad his mom gives up as the punk rockers take over in the early 80s, and he's got, was that a sun he gets tattooed on his forehead?
I think so.
It's ridiculous. And of course he mismanages the bar, and it ends up just becoming kind of a decrepit area where homeless people hang out. But he's great, man. And then eventually he becomes a cult leader who worships Brendan Fraser's family as they come to the surface one by one. I love Joey Slotnick, man. Great casting choice there.
Oh yeah, he's so good in this. I love the cult worship aspect where Christopher Walken comes up out of the elevator and he's like, leave my elevator alone. And then that becomes their chant. Their like cult worship chant later on. It's so funny. Oh, I want to talk a little bit too about when the authorities are investigating the plane crash afterwards. They're again talking about how weird Christopher Walken's character is. And they say, used to drink hot Dr. Pepper. And one of the guys is like, hot Dr. Pepper? Good God. It's so funny.
Right, because even his wife's reaction to that, when he just gives it to her, assuming that she loves it too, is pretty disgusted.
Yeah. Again, clues you into their relationship where he's like, this is your favorite. And she's like, no, Calvin, it's your favorite. And she's getting all upset with the bunker thing. And he's like, would you like a tranquilizer?
Obviously, you could tell that we both enjoy a lot of this. I do have some criticisms, and one would be, at the end of the movie, I wish there was some point to where he had to come to terms with his kind of narcissism and obliviousness with their relationship, because I know they get stuck in a bunker together, but eventually they all get out of there, right? No relationship can survive with one person being that narcissistic and oblivious of the other's needs. I wish there was maybe a little more of them working that out somewhere late in the film.
Any complaints that I have for this film are at the ending. So we'll definitely get into that.
All right, good deal. But I guess we can get into Brendan Fraser finally making his appearance, 17 or 18 minutes into the movie, where we get to him being, what was he when they first showed him? I guess in his 20s. Whenever he finally leaves the bunker, he's 35, though as many people comment, he looks much younger than that. But I loved whenever he talks about wanting to meet a girl and to have a girlfriend. And he's so nice and so sweet to his parents, right?
He actually says, I want to meet a girl. I'm just thinking about it a little, just for about the last 15 years down here. Oh, I just think he's great in this role. I had a little quote I pulled from this critics article from sfgate.com. It says, nobody plays a naif like Brendan Fraser, from his Encino Man to a guileless rock musician in Airheads to George of the Jungle. He manages to imbue his characters with a sense of sweetness and vulnerability and complete cluelessness, and somehow make it all look attractive. I just think that's so true. And I didn't realize how many fish out of water, just kind of idiot characters that he does play. And we'll get into Dudley Do-Right and how that fits in here too. But it's true. You think about Encino Man, you think of Airheads, George of the Jungle. I guess you could say he definitely gets typecast in a way in a lot of these kind of bumbling, young, earnest man roles. But he does such a great job with it. I don't want to say he's never been better than in this movie, but I can't imagine anybody else playing this role for sure.
It's crazy, though. He does show his range this year because he's far goofier than he is in this movie, in the movie we're going to talk about later. But in The Mummy, he plays a much more competent, more kind of assertive, aggressive character very for believably.
Sure. So he definitely has range. I don't want to suggest he doesn't. I want to just say that he gets cast in these roles often because I think he does such a great job.
Yeah, I can't think of anyone who does this kind of role better. He's kind of like the prototype of this kind of role, especially in the 90s.
And I think his interplay here with Christopher Walken is so good with Sissy Spacek. You really believe them as a family. I think there's a lot of sweetness to this film, just like we talked about with Tommy Boy. There's obviously just a nostalgia and a warm-heartedness for those old-time values in the 50s. There's obviously a satire and making fun of it too, but I like that there's a balance of the tone with some sweetness there as well. Just again, the whole like snapping and winking that Walken does. I love how Fraser mimics that at the dinner table with him. And I don't know, there's just this repartee that they have, like this. They're almost like quirky and kindred spirit, obviously, in the same way, because he's been raised by this very eccentric man, but he's so naive and so innocent at the same time. It's really funny.
But I also like that he doesn't pick up his dad's obliviousness. He has that gentleman quality where he's trying to make everyone around him comfortable. So he is much more observant than his father, thankfully. For Alicia Silverstone's sake later in the movie, thankfully.
That's even the definition he gives to Alicia Silverstone and her roommate Troy later about what a gentleman and a lady is. So yeah, you're just picking that up naturally from this movie, Nick.
I am, yep. Thanks, Brendan.
He's teaching us. All right, so present day, love the scene where Walken goes up, meets the Joey Slotnick character that we talk about. I love that this whole cult worship thing that Joey Slotnick's character develops into starts with him talking to another homeless guy about AA and Alcoholics Anonymous and Heroin Anonymous. They all want you to believe in a higher power. I've looked up into the sky and all I've seen is an airplane, which I can't afford anyway. And then all of a sudden, Christopher Walken comes up out of the elevator and Joey Slotnick just is like yelling, "I've seen the light," and he falls over. I don't know, he's just got all these comedic pratfalls that are really funny. And then, of course, Christopher Walken going out into what they believe has been like a nuclear wasteland for these last 30 years. And he knows that something's been going on up there because he's heard different noises from the surface while he's been down in the fallout shelter. But I just love his reaction to everything that he sees. You know, you've got the rap music playing. He meets a transvestite hooker. He sees drunks thrown up on the street, the gangbangers pointing guns at him. And then finally he walks into the adult bookstore and just screams. He goes back to his fallout shelter with his family and just like, they've created a subspecies up there. They're all mutants.
I love that he says they offer lawn furniture as a come on.
Yeah. But this is great too, where I feel like there's a little social commentary obviously on that, where it's like, oh, look how crazy and messed up the late 20th century has become. But in this moment where he's basically deciding for his family, we're going to stay down here, we're going to make do. And at this point, Sissy Spacek has had enough, and she's just finally stands up to him and is like, no, Calvin, no, we can't stay down here any longer. And he starts to yell and like put his foot down, like, I'm the head of this household, do as I say. But as soon as he says do as I say, he's like, oh, and then he has a heart attack immediately. I just thought that was so funny. And yeah, such like a little touch where it's like, oh, this guy who's stuck in the values of the 50s, and you know, he's very much that patriarchal man where he's like, do as I say, and then he has immediate heart attacks. It's like the 90s are like, nope, can't have any of that.
And he's been eating nothing but basically canned goods and the fish that he's raised down in the bunker for the past 35 years.
Yeah, which is, it's a smart aspect of the film here too, where it's like, how are they going to get Adam to go up here, and like, what's his mission going to be? So now he's got to be the one to go up and get supplies for the family. And like you said, he also wants to meet a girl. So that's where our romantic comedy aspect comes in. Of course, along with his mom saying, you need to find a liquor store. Write that down. Because she's like, I need my booze. And stay out of the adult bookstore. There's poison gas, invisible poison gas.
And I think maybe my favorite moment of this entire movie is when he comes up through the elevator. Obviously, he sees Slotnick again and deepens Slotnick's understanding of the cult religion that he's founding. Because he says that he is the son after he has met the father.
Right.
Which is just absurd. But I love when he's walking out of this burned out building and sees the sky for the first time. Yeah. That shot was so beautiful, man. The way that the sky just kind of fades in.
Yeah, I thought of you watching that. I was like, this is a great shot. I think Nick will really appreciate this. Because the camera just follows him out the door. And then, yeah, it adjusts to where at first it's just all blown out. So you're kind of in his perspective, seeing the sky, seeing the sun for the first time. And then his just awe and marvel. And it's like with a character like that, how can you not love that guy and root for him and find him so likable? It's like the same thing when later he goes to the ocean for the first time and he's just in awestruck wonder of beauty of creation. He's just like a little kid. He's not inhibited in any way, and he's in such stark contrast to everybody around him who's just very jaded and very 90s.
Yeah, everyone is so snarky and sarcastic and cynical and non-trusting. And he goes into this hobby store and tries to sell his baseball cards, and the guy immediately tries to screw him over so badly. He's going to offer him nickels basically for this box of baseball cards that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this 42 minutes into this 112-minute movie is where we finally meet Alicia Silverstone.
Yes. I think she is okay in this movie. I think in this scene especially, she's immediately likable because the card guy is trying to screw over Brendan Fraser. She works there at this hobby store, but she's not going to let him get taken advantage of. So that definitely gives her a lot of weight with the audience, I think, where, okay, I like this girl. She's snarky, but has a heart. And then we find out, of course, her name is Eve, and his name is Adam and Eve.
It was meant to be. It's weird. In movies, when they do things like that, a lot of times it bothers me. For some reason, it didn't bother me as much in this movie. I don't know why I'm giving it a pass, but I'll give it a pass there.
I think it helps a lot that the card shop guy's like, oh, Adam and Eve, yeah, okay, good riddance, get out of here, that kind of thing. So he comments on like the goofiness of it. But yeah, I think it works here. I like it.
And Alicia Silverstone, I feel like, is the prototypical 90s girl because of Clueless, which is probably the most iconic film, I don't know, iconic teenage girl film of the 90s.
Yeah. Or ever.
Or ever. So it's kind of weird to think, watching her in this, she really wasn't in that much else. I mean,
No.
between Clueless and this, you get The Babysitter, you get True Crime, you get Batman and Robin,
Yeah.
Excess Baggage, and then that's it, Blast from the Past. Pretty much it for her 90s after Clueless. Going on after this movie, then there's especially not a lot. Just a few years after this, she's in Scooby-Doo 2. She's in just in a lot of weird stuff, not really in anything big where she's a star. The course of her career to me is very strange.
It is very strange.
She burst onto the scene, and then she just kind of faded off, and it's just kind of been there, but not the way that you would have thought she would have after Clueless in 1995.
I definitely think she works best in something like Clueless. I feel like here she does the snark well, but talking about Fraser's range, I feel like she's very limited in this role where she only has a few different expressions where she's either looking kind of pouty or exasperated, or she kind of has that come hither look when she's feeling really turned on by him later. But yeah, I felt like, I don't know, some of her acting, some of her dialogue was a little stilted compared to just how loose and free and charming Fraser is by comparison.
It was interesting watching those interviews I was telling you about, the Wygant interviews, because she also interviewed Alicia Silverstone, and she was very happy, at least in the interview, with the way the film turned out. The gist of what she said was that she liked how the film seemed to believe in love and how it promoted Brendan Fraser's character as kind of this ideal. And then she went on this tangent about how girls usually like bad boys when they're that age, and how she had gone for a lot of bad boys up to that point and didn't want to do it anymore. And that got me thinking, Jordan, when my sister went to see this, she didn't like it that much. My sister dated the worst men possible.
Right.
Her husband's great. And then I thought about my wife, and I think her boyfriend before me sucked pretty hard, and she didn't really like it. And I just thought about all that, and then I thought, is the reason that they didn't like this movie when they saw it because Brendan Fraser is the antithesis of a bad boy, and they were at that Alicia Silverstone age from, when she's in an Aerosmith video throwing a condom into a bush instead of using it? Is that why they didn't like the movie?
I was gonna say, I'm glad that you brought up the Aerosmith videos, because that's a huge thing for Silverstone as well.
That was probably when I first became aware of her. She was pretty incredible in that video.
Yeah, I remember watching those, and I remember seeing Excess Baggage, and probably just being like, oh, it's that girl from the Aerosmith videos. We got to watch this movie. Didn't know anything about Benicio del Toro or anybody at the time, probably.
Oh, wait, you know what? The first thing that I remember seeing her in, The Wonder Years, was one of my favorite shows in the early 90s. There's an episode where she's like his dream girl, his high school dream girl.
Hi, Kevin.
And she made a pretty strong impression on me there, just like she did to Kevin Arnold.
I think you make a good point. I like how the film sets up how she's had a lot of problems with romance, and she's gone for these bad guys. And she's even self-aware enough to say, I'm really shallow and I go for shallow men, basically. And I like that is a part of her character, and that she's just a little turned off by at first how like goofy and nice and out of touch this guy is, but it grows on her, which is cool. Like I said, she has heart. She takes him up on an offer. He says, I'll give you one of these baseball cards if you just drive me to my hotel. And she takes the offer, but then later comes back and she's like, what am I doing? Okay. And she gives him back the card. I like how when she calls him on the hotel phone, he says, hot diggity dog, thanks for calling me on the telephone. It's like only Brendan Fraser could pull out that line.
You're right. Only Brendan.
Yeah.
I can't think of anyone else who could do it. I wish he had done more movies with Pauly Shore, man. I really like the way the two of them played off of each other. I wish we had more of the two of them.
Fraser and Pauly Shore?
Yes.
It's not often you hear someone say they wish there were more Pauly Shore movies in the world.
Hear me out, though. In Encino Man, and this is no offense against Sean Astin, because I love him from The Goonies, Samwise Gamgee, incredible. Yeah. I love Sean Astin. But Pauly Shore has an energy at his best where he also is this kind of innocent stoner guy, right? Like he's like, yeah, bruh, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm just chilling. And he and Fraser played so well off of each other in Encino Man, where they have different energies, but they're both kind of chill bruh guys.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen Pauly Shore in this movie somehow. Playing off of this character. I think it would have been amazing.
I think Fraser can kind of capture that wildness and goofiness that Pauly Shore can bring to stuff too. So them as a duo makes sense in a way. And Sean Astin kind of feels like a third wheel in a way with Encino Man, where he's just kind of the straight guy. He's not the interesting character you really remember. He's just like, oh no, we're going to get in trouble.
And the movie kind of hits on that, too, at the end, where he's being a real jerk, and Pauly Shore's like, dude, Link is our friend, because he's only thinking about himself.
Right. I like how this is going to turn into an Encino Man episode.
Well, it's my blast from the past. Blast from the past. No Pauly Shore, but still pretty good.
Well, I like how she calls him a lost puppy. I feel like that's a very apt description of his whole persona in this movie, and just those puppy dog eyes that he has. And obviously she's just kind of drawn to him, even though she doesn't want to be. Like she says, it never works out with men, but then she does take him up on this job offer. So that was interesting, where she can't take his card just for driving him to the hotel, but he's like, I've got to buy all these supplies and take care of these starving people, aka my parents down in the bunker. Being smart, at least at this point, not telling her his full backstory. His mom has instructed him, just tell people you're from out of town on business. And later he doesn't lie, but they're led to believe that he's from Alaska. So that explains his weirdness to everybody.
Yes. I'll tell you, as a longtime card collector, he's giving her these baseball cards as payment that are worth so much money. The way that they handle the baseball cards in this movie, where they're just casually crunching them in their hand and tossing them around, was giving me panic attacks.
Right. I mean, you know me as a comic book card collector, at least for a brief stint a few years ago, and just having an affinity for trading cards. I definitely love this aspect of the film. But yeah, you're right. He's got him like in his pockets at one point. He's just whipping them out from everywhere. You're just like, what are you doing? At one point he's got him in like a cigar box, and she has the cigar box, and this is at the end of the movie where she does the whole like slow-mo run after him and drops the box of cards like all over the dirty Los Angeles street. I'm like, no.
I was getting stressed. I was about to do like Christopher Walken and have a heart attack for sure.
You were going to be like, oh, do as I say, protect those cards.
Right. Yeah. And we're introduced to Alicia Silverstone's roommate, who is played by Dave Foley of Kids in the Hall and News Radio fame. News Radio came to an end right around the time that this movie came out in 1999. But look, I'll tell you, there have been a couple of points in my life where I've Googled the phrase, is Dave Foley gay? He's not, but he does play a gay man here. What did you think about Dave Foley in this film?
I didn't know a whole lot about Dave Foley. I didn't watch Kids in the Hall a whole lot, but every now and then see it on Comedy Central. But I was just reading up the trivia about this movie, and talks about how this was a direct rip of one of his characters from Kids in the Hall, where it's called Steps, and he plays a gay character with a bunch of other gay guys that are just making kind of social commentary. But basically, this is that character, but a little more fleshed out. He's just this cliche gay best friend, which is kind of just a trope that would continue on from here ad nauseum. But I thought he was really funny. I like that. I don't know. It didn't feel as cliche, or like there weren't like jokes about him being gay at his expense. It was more about Brendan Fraser's character being unaware of anything revolving around being a homosexual, or Silverstone says, oh yeah, he's gay, and he's just like, oh, good for you. And he's just like totally a mess about like what that even means. He's just thinking of it as, gay means he's happy-go-lucky. But I thought Troy's character was really fun. I thought David Foley was really good in this. Probably
the best aspect of the character, and what really makes him likable. And really, I think if you vibe with this movie, the good vibe that this movie has, where he realizes very early on the nature of Brendan Fraser's character. And I don't mean that he came from a bunker, but just the quality of him as a human being. He figures that out really early on. He's very kind and understanding with Brendan Fraser once you see him kind of make the connection of who he's dealing with there. And you can see that Alicia Silverstone is fighting making that connection. And he's kind of the bond between the two of them. He's kind of there to smooth them getting together in a way, because he knows that Brendan Fraser would be great for Alicia Silverstone, but he also knows that she on her own is probably not going to allow it to happen.
Right, and him coming out and just saying y'all should be together would turn her away as well. So he's got to play it careful there. Yeah, I do like how Troy embraces Brendan Fraser's character, Adam. Maybe call him by his character name, but or we just keep calling him Brendan Fraser.
This is Filmshake. Is this a joke, Jordan?
This is Filmshake. We don't use character names around here.
When we get to Dudley Do-Right, we'll still be calling him Brendan Fraser.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll say Troy, but then I'll say Brendan Fraser, so I'll mix it up as usual. Yeah, he does get embraced by I think he's attracted to him, not in a sexual way, obviously, but attracted to his personality, his likability, just his charm.
His Brendan Fraser purity.
His Brendan Fraser-ness, yeah. He gets them all dressed up. He buys them new clothes. He really helps them out, whereas, like you said, Silverstone is resisting it. So, yeah, I do like the dynamic between the three of them. I think it's just as believable as the Walken, Spacek, Fraser dynamic. I think these characters, this cast, works really well together.
But speaking of the phrase, works really well together. So I have that theory, the bad boy theory, about why they all didn't like it. But then I talked to my cousin Amber, who is my age, about why she wasn't high on this movie. And she watched it recently, which totally destroyed my theory. It was my issue with this film, my chief issue, which is not a huge chief issue. I still liked it, but it was enough to dissuade her from liking it. I'm not 100% sure who this is for, because there are some really funny moments in the movie, but it's not consistently funny. It goes away from humor for long patches, and then it's definitely not your stereotypical rom-com. It doesn't hit the stereotypical beats. So it's not if you're just into rom-coms, it might not quite do it for you. If you're just into comedies, it might not do it for you. I think you're going to know if you are into this movie within the first 20 minutes. You could pretty much turn her off at that point if you're not. If you are, then I think you'll be in the same boat as Jordan and I and enjoy it. But I understood where she was coming from. Because, I don't know, maybe you don't agree, but I feel like the tone here is a little strange, and that it's not quite one thing or the other, and it might not be for everyone.
I can totally see that. Yeah, it's definitely not a typical rom-com, so I can see how that might throw some people off. It's a good question to ask, like, who is this for? I think ultimately this movie is for me, because I was just super entertained and enjoyed this so much. And I think I like it because of that quirkiness and difference, that it's not your stereotypical rom-com. It's got this interesting premise and the sweetness. I think all that, like you said, it not being like full-on comedy, not being full-on one thing or the other, I think that's probably because of the values that it tries to present and the nostalgia that it has for the 50s. It's just like a very specific document from 99. And like you said, it feels very particular to 99 in a weird way, but it's not like anything else either. So yeah, it's an odd duck, and I really enjoy it. I really think this is a solidly smart and fun, like well put together movie. I do have some issues, like I said, but overall, rewatching this, I just watched this like a few months ago and then rewatching it again for the show. I was just very impressed. Like, man, I forgot just how like it goes from one thing to the next, just different scenarios, different gags that I find, if they're not super laugh out loud, they're at least charming and interesting and entertaining, that it carried me along with no problem.
Man, I feel pretty close to that. I have two things to say to it. The first is the 1999-ness. I definitely agree. Like I said, I feel like 99 is the culmination of the whole century, and I feel like this fits into that with the way you go back to the early 60s and move on to the end of the century, into the millennium. It feels very 1999. One day I hope to see every film that was released that year. I'm going to do it at some point. I feel like I've seen a lot of them. There's still a few I've missed. But the second thing is, we didn't mention yet, or at least I don't think we did, this was a request by our patron, your mother-in-law.
Right. Yeah, we should definitely shout out to Tanya Vize and my father-in-law, John Vize. They watched this recently and really loved it. I don't think they had ever seen it, but I asked her, why was it a pick for your patron pick. What was it that drew you to it? What were some different aspects of it that stood out to you? And so I should mention what she said. She said, I loved the fact that he was a Renaissance man because of the sheltered life he led, but his parents exposed him to good music and dancing in foreign languages. So she enjoyed that. We didn't mention Perry Como that Brendan Fraser loves so much when he's in the car with Alicia Silverstone. And he gets her to turn the channel back to Perry Como, and he's just freaking out over hearing Perry Como. And I know Tanya is a big Perry Como fan and loves music from that era as well. So
you had him. It's Perry.
Perry?
Perry Como. Go back. You had him. Go back. Go back. Back.
Okay, it's 75 cents.
That's it.
There.
I could die right now.
Over this?
Yeah. Listen to this part. This is where it really takes off. Wait for it.
You are one scary son of a gun.
yeah, I'm glad that she was able to connect with the character in that way.
Yeah, I'm glad that she did, because I had never seen this before, so I don't know when I would have gotten to it. I guess whenever I made it my mission to see every 1999 movie, I was glad to watch it.
What did you think, Nick, about the line, Eve, can I skate around your block? And then, of course, he's given some rollerblades, and we see some roller skating at Venice Beach. Just feels very classic 90s. We've got the babes out there and like the bikinis and the skates. And this is, like I said, is where he sees the ocean. And it's just a sweet little 90s touch. And I love this whole moment where he's out there on the beach and then jumps into the ocean. Just like, how can you not love it? I was so afraid going into this that you'd kind of hinted about your feelings on Dudley Do-Right. And then I was like, oh no, is he going to hate Blast from the Past? Am I going to have to defend this movie's honor here? But I'm glad it sounds like you liked it for the most part. Thought we were going to have to throw down because I was just like, how can you not love Brendan Fraser in this movie?
Well, I love that we do get that California part, which again, I feel like that LA vibe was best in the 90s, and you were recently there. So again, this felt like it was saying, hey, Jordan.
That's right. I was just at Venice Beach. Cool to see that again here in this movie and all the graffiti. And obviously he's skating past some of the homeless at one point. He's just like kind of looking at them out the side of his eyes like, what? And then the girls looking at him like, hey, while they're roller skating on the bike trail. Oh, and you've got the very 90s song, I See the Sun in Your Eyes, playing. Cool 90s soundtrack as well.
Yeah, that's right. And we start getting the first pangs of Alicia Silverstone getting a little jealous because, part of her job for him is to help him find a woman that he can bring back down to his bunker. Even though she doesn't know that he's going back to a bunker with her, she thinks he's going back to Alaska. This really comes to a head at the swing dance club that they take him to.
Yeah, this is big pinnacle moment of this movie. I don't know, it feels like a touchstone of Brendan Fraser's career in a way. Just love this scene where they're trying to check out women. I think one thing that they tell him is try to look unimpressed, and then he just looks like he's crazy. They're like, no, not crazy, just bored. And then he looks like super weird, and they're like, just vaguely bored. They're like, just be yourself. And ultimately, they are kind of hesitant and think that he's just going to fail completely with trying to pick up a woman, but he succeeds like gloriously. He ends up talking to these two blondes, and then they go in, he's making them laugh. They think he's so funny and charming. He doesn't even really know why he's being that funny, but he goes up to one of them and says, excuse me, I think I lost my Congressional Medal of Honor over here. And she thinks that's hilarious. And then they're like, oh, do you want to dance? He's like, oh, I took a dance lesson every day of my life up until yesterday. And they're just like, oh, that's so funny. And then he has just this crazy swing dance and like jitterbug with both these girls. And he's just like the life of the party. And Troy and Alicia are just like, what? I just love their reactions to just like, what is going on? And the slow-mo shot of him shaking that finger and waving to Alicia is just hilarious. That is one of my favorite things that I've seen in a long time from Brendan Fraser.
I love this scene. Again, it's very 1999-ish. Or it's got that junkyard of the century of the millennium feel where it just feels like everything helps you remember that the 20th century existed almost. It reminds me of a game that came out the year before this, Grim Fandango, one of my favorite games ever. The music in the scene when they're playing the swing music and sort of the 40s club music too really reminded me of that to a degree, like this Cab Calloway type stuff. I love this entire scene, and I like how Alicia Silverstone, finally she can't get over her jealousy. She's freaking out because she sees, I've been with this guy, he's a great catch this whole time, and now I can't deny that he is a great catch because everybody else wants to reel him in.
He's got great big feet, he's jumping to the beat, he's been dancing in the street, he's dressed so fine, got lots of loot, we like to call him Mr. Zoot. He drives a great big car, smokes a big cigar, looks like a king and he acts like a star. When we see him drive by, he goes toot toot, we all shout, hey Mr. Zoot. He's got purple suspenders and a yellow tie. Say what? Come on boys, I tell you no lie. He's got all those hats, funky spats. He is the hippest cat. No, he can't be beat wherever he goes. He turns up the heat, so when you see him drive by with that big Saru, don't forget to shout, hey Mr. Zoot.
I love too that she's mad because he's being reeled in by these other women, but he's so smooth in this dance that she starts to question him and think that he's lying as well. Like, you're not from Alaska. I just love that the club is like the Club 40s, and it's just happenstance that they go to this club and he knows how to jitterbug. And even though he's this fish out of water, everything is working for him in this moment. Whereas you get a lot of movies that would throw this kind of scene in and he'd be the fish out of water. And there's other moments in this movie too where it's just like, oh, he's completely out of touch and everyone thinks he's weird because of the different culture and he's just missed out on the last 30 years or whatever. But I love how this moment is just like everything working for him, and it's really satisfying, even to the end of the scene where Alicia is kind of entertaining this ex-boyfriend of hers, Cliff, who's just this complete douchebag, and he gets into a fight with Fraser, and Fraser's like, he's been trained, he's been homeschooled, he's been taught to fight by his awesome dad, Christopher Walken. So he's like, I do know how to defend myself, Cliff. And he just keeps punching him over and over in the face. And Cliff is trying to like be dirty and like punch him when he's not looking, but he blocks it and he keeps punching him. And he just finally he's just like, okay, I quit. I'm going home.
Yes. And I have to mention this guy, this huge douchebag guy that keeps trying to punch him is played by Nathan Fillion from Firefly, and he just does such a great job in this role.
Oh yeah, I thought I recognized him. Yeah, he's the main guy in Firefly, right?
Yeah, he's Captain Mal. I was worried too because he has that one moment earlier where he's getting his stuff from Alicia Silverstone's place. You really get to know her character here because this is the type of guy she goes for, just total, complete narcissistic douchebag guy.
Right, because didn't Fraser even walk up and say, isn't Cliff just a butt with hair?
Yes, you sounded exactly like him too. That was awesome. But I was a little scared there. Why'd they have that scene? Because what happened to him? Like, was that just a one-off appearance by Nathan Fillion? Nope. He comes back for this moment, and he keeps trying to sucker punch Brendan Fraser. That scene had me crying. I was laughing so hard because he's so good at playing that douchey guy. And the purity of Brendan Fraser, Jordan.
Right.
Just watching him hit this guy over and over again right before he can get a hit in. It just killed. I wanted that scene to go on for 2 hours. I could have watched 112 minutes of that.
It was so satisfying. And I think that's a good term to stick with Fraser, is just his purity. Even that moment, he's just defending himself. He's not punching him out of malice or becoming a jerk, really. He's just like, oh, I'm putting up my dukes and you're going to try and punch me. I'm going to defend myself and punch you. And yeah, he's so pure and so earnest. At this point, Eve just quits. She's, I guess, struggling with her feelings, very confused. I love later where she goes home and Troy comes home without Brendan Fraser, and she's like, well, I've got to take care of him. I'm his pimp. And Troy's like, yeah, you're a psychic too. Eve, the psychic pimp. I thought that was a great line.
That was pretty great. And this really brings us into the end game of the film.
Well, you brought up the gentleman line. This is where they have that talk. I thought this was, again, mixed with comedy, but then you get like these sweet moments between characters and a little social commentary. It's not super heavy-handed, but at times there's just little touches. I like this where Troy says, you know what Adam called me? He said, I'm a gentleman and you're a lady. He's like, I thought gentleman was someone who owned horses. And then they talk about his table manners and how he teaches them table manners are for showing others you respect them. And a gentleman or a lady is someone who tries to make others as comfortable as possible. I love Alicia Silverstone and both of them. It's just a very Generation X moment where they're just out of touch with any of these family values or wholesome manners, you know, having just not been taught any of this. And they're like, where do you think he got all this information? And Troy says, the oddest place, his parents. I don't think I got that memo from mine. I just like love how that encapsulates so much about the culture of the 90s and the Generation X versus this kind of sweet nostalgic look back at the 50s and some of the stuff that had been lost.
Yes, and I love the line from Troy, again, since we're not going to say Dave Foley, just for this one character. From Troy, whenever Troy tells Brendan Fraser that Alicia Silverstone doesn't need a nice boy, she needs a nice man. And then Fraser puts the moves on her and they kiss. And man, they had some great chemistry. It's a pretty hot kiss, dude.
Yeah. Is that when she hurts her leg after she's scared by him showing back up? She's showing her feelings for sure here because she's trying to run after him because she thinks he's with Sophie, this woman at the club that she said she hated. This isn't the woman I don't think she said has bitch written all over her, but it's a different person that he's speaking French to, and she, you know, it's obviously almost like the arch nemesis of Alicia Silverstone. I love that. He shows up and scares her, and she does a pretty funny pratfall where she screams and then rolls like over her, you know, rolls over backwards on the street and ends up hurting her leg. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, it was great. Also, I love that the girl that she says has a bitch written all over her face is just standing like inauspiciously, not doing anything and just looking normal.
Yeah.
But Jordan, the kiss, there's so much tongue, Jordan. There's so much tongue.
Oh, this is after he's blowing on her knee, singing Perry Como to her. But yeah, like you said, they get pretty hot there and they have a kiss. And is there a lot of tongue? I didn't notice.
I don't know. I think there was. What if I just imagined there was a lot of tongue?
I thought it was a pretty sweet kiss. Like, you know, obviously he's not going to go for like a full make-out French tonguing or anything, but it's a pretty like intimate, hot and heavy kiss. And he pulls back, and I love how this moment, what hinges for him telling her the truth about his background is her asking, have you ever had sex before? And when he says no, she's like, how is that possible? Like, this ruins all credibility of his story and everything. So he's like, okay, I have to tell you the truth about the fallout shelter and everything. But this is another really like funny moment where her face just looks so freaked out, where he's like telling her about the fallout shelter. And he's like, I want to take you down to my fallout shelter and live with my mom and dad. Father said, if I meet a healthy young girl, bring her on down. And you look plenty healthy to me. She's just so like, oh my God, this guy wants to put me in a hole like Silence of the Lambs and like abduct me, basically. So I love that this kind of just all falls apart in this moment where she calls the counselors from family services and basically is going to have him committed at this moment because she thinks he's crazy.
Yeah, this is maybe the moment for me where the tone is the most kind of volatile.
Yeah.
There's a little strain of sadness running through the entire movie, and maybe it goes with what you said about those values that he had being lost over the time that he was in the bunker as a kid. Those values kind of dying off, and how everyone is so cynical now. There's a bit of a sadness to that, but the scene where the agent comes to talk to him and they all think he's crazy and needs to be in an asylum, that was pretty sad. And all of a sudden, the best laugh of the movie, in my opinion, where he steals the female agent's vehicle.
Well, no, he's in the moving truck. He runs around the block basically as one of the guys is chasing him. Then he gets in the moving truck and backs into her car, and she's yelling like, "That's my car, you son of a bitch!" I love how earlier she said everyone needs to keep calm And then Troy's like, okay, the important thing is for everyone to keep calm. And then she freaks out and starts attacking Troy, which I thought that was great.
Yeah, there's a lot of funny moments here mixed into the sadness and the feeling of, oh no, they're not going to end up together and everything's all jacked up. But things work out, right?
Yeah, I like how later he finds the adult bookstore again because he was kind of lost. He wasn't sure how to get back to the bunker, but he sees the adult bookstore, which then leads him back to our friend Joey Slotnick. Oh, he calls himself Archbishop Melker. He was like the Archbishop of the cult now. And he goes down into the bunker with Archbishop, and Fraser says, I think I'm being chased by a psychiatrist. And Slotnick says, yeah, it happens. It's just so good.
Again, there are a lot of huge laughs here near the end of the movie where you would think there would be the least amount of laughs. Usually in a movie like this, the laughs would be throughout, and then when you got to the more serious parts at the end, they would kind of go away, and instead, this is where the biggest ones are.
Is that weird for you? Like, is that what kind of upsets the tone in a way?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. And again, I like this movie, but maybe I wish that they found some way to balance the laughs throughout more. It feels like it's almost bottom loaded with laughs.
Huh.
I don't know. I mean, I did laugh throughout, but I definitely laughed the most in these moments where I would think I would not be laughing. I don't know. Maybe that's something that you liked about it more, that it's kind of idiosyncratic that way. Or maybe you thought that the laughs were even throughout.
Yeah, I didn't really see it as uneven. I felt like it was pretty amusing and like evenly balanced as far as the laughs go. But I do appreciate the heart and some of the sadness and, you know, some of the more reflective moments that we get here. Of course, getting into the end of the movie, we have Eve and Troy going to Adam's hotel. They discover the stocks. He's rich, out of date toothpaste, and basically like, oh, he's on the level. And Troy is like the kindest, most polite man you've ever met, who loves you, walks into your life. She says, and I have him committed. So there's definitely a sadness to that, or just like a warpedness of like, yeah, there's this commentary like if someone really did have all these 1950s manners, we'd probably think they were an alien as well and have them committed because they're acting so insane and different. But really it's like, oh, we're all the jacked up people. Like we're all cynical, like you said. And I don't know, it's weird. It's a complicated thing to have nostalgia, right? We're watching this like with 90s nostalgia in mind. So there's a double layer there. So, I mean, there's been a lot of nostalgia for the 50s and like, oh, it was a wholesome time, when we know like that's not the complete truth. So I feel like there is like a half truth here of like, oh yeah, all these family values and things that, I don't know, it almost goes into like the whole MAGA crowd thing of like, make America great again, like bring back those good old fashioned like heteronormative values and everything. So there's some complication there. Maybe some of that this movie's not even like privy to, you know, in the late 90s here. It's not even thinking about in that way. I mean, I definitely think it satires the 50s as well too, but it's also nostalgic for it in a way.
I can say, given my own experience, now that I'm in my 40s, and we're doing a 90s podcast, a 90s movies podcast.
This is the 90s. This is a radio show, Nick.
Right. A radio show. Like we're in the 50s again.
Yep.
In the late 90s and the early 2000s, I remember rebelling against that idea of the 50s being more wholesome and being like, screw that, like punk rock, man. That's a bunch of lies. Yeah. Everything was just as bad then and all this stuff. But Jordan, now that I'm in 2023, and I think that we're living in a dystopian hellhole, and I'm idealizing the 90s, I get it. If I think the 90s were that much better than right now, if that holds true, how much better were the 50s than now? I can't even imagine, Jordan.
Yeah. There's something to that for sure. But I don't know. I think of, I remember we were watching Stand By Me with my film club recently. It's set in the early 60s too. So, and there wasn't that countercultural movement yet. And I remember somebody in the audience while we were discussing it, as a younger guy, being like, this was like late 50s, early 60s. I thought it would be a lot more wholesome, but like all the characters like were cursing a lot and like all the dysfunctional families and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably just like more realistic than what we've been led to believe, you know, as far as thinking of stuff like Leave It to Beaver and like these very iconic images of the 50s and the perfect nuclear family and everything. I like that this movie, along with that, also shows the I guess, dynamic and interesting characters like the Christopher Walken character. Like you said, he is narcissistic, he is oblivious, and the movie knows that and is commenting on that. So it's not like painting everybody as like this perfect person from the 1950s and how we've lost that. But Fraser just brings that charm and that innocence naturally, being that he's Fraser, but also that he's this character that hasn't grown up with any outside negative influences. He's only been influenced by his parents in the safety of his home. So if there was a situation like this where someone came to the surface, they would obviously be very naive and innocent and not have like the worldly influences that have jaded and made people cynical like in the 90s.
That's probably a good way to look at things because, again, even Stand By Me, which I love, that's Rob Reiner and Stephen King's perspective, which is going to be different from someone else's perspective. So how can we know what it was really like in the 50s? For some people, it might have been like Leave It to Beaver. For others, it might have been like Corey Feldman. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, it just depends on your experience, right? So, I mean, just like somebody could have had a beautiful, brilliant childhood in the 90s and somebody else could have had a horrible life growing up, so it just kind of depends on your situation. We've been presented with these different images or ideas of decades now looking back, but there's so much more nuance to it, right? Bringing it back. This is Filmshake. We're getting too highfalutin here. All right, so we're wrapping this up. I like how they go back to the porn shop and they're trying to track Adam down now, and Troy and Alicia are stomping around in the porn shop. And apparently to keep a PG-13 rating, they had to blur all the VHS covers in this porn shop.
Which I noticed
when they finally go in. Yeah, I noticed that too. And I love how they go in. They're like stomping around on the floor because they think the bunker's underneath. They're like, Adam. And the guy who's behind the counter has like a huge stack of porn videos and he's like backing away looking all freaked out. And I guess the owner comes forward and they're like, hey, do you have a basement? And he says, well, yeah, but all the really good stuff is right here up front. And then they say, well, yeah, okay, but do you have a back entrance or something? And he says, are you kidding? Of course.
I need to rib my wife about that too, because in the captions it says Persian music is playing and the guy is supposed to be Persian. And my wife is Persian, so I should mention that to her. Nice. She'll enjoy it. And then finally, Alicia Silverstone gets down to the bunker, Jordan. And it just looks nice seeing the two of them down there. I'm not going to lie.
It does. It's a nice payoff. She finally finds Adam. They meet back up. Just a cool callback to the beginning of the movie where they're entertaining them for dinner. Some of the same things are happening. Sissy Spacek is working in the kitchen and Christopher Walken is making the drinks and telling the same dumb joke about the duck and everything. I just love anytime a film brings something back like that, and it's just like, oh, and this is a nice little wrap up. So I like that. What I don't like is this dumbass voiceover at the end.
Yes. Okay, Jordan, there we go. So this was my biggest issue with the entire film.
Yeah, this just kills it for me.
Yeah, because even when you go and read IMDb reviews, because obviously this movie means a lot to some people. If you go and look at all the 8, 9, 10 out of 10 reviews, there's something in this movie that people connect to, whether it's the wholesomeness of Fraser's character or just the general plot and themes in the movie. But even some of those reviews will say, I really wish that they would have maybe given Silverstone a voiceover earlier on so her voice doesn't just come out of nowhere. Like, I kind of wondered where this internal monologue is coming from. And Obviously you and I, who are both voiceover snobs, both smelled something bad here, Jordan.
Oh, man. It just kind of derails the ending of this movie for me. It's completely unnecessary. Like you said, it comes out of nowhere. It's not in the beginning of the movie. And that is a huge pet peeve where a movie will do that. Just throw it in at the end just to wrap things up. That makes no sense. Her reading of all the lines for the voiceover is really stilted. It ends just on a dud where she's talking about him and how he says that parents take care of kids. And then, by turn, the kids take care of parents. And her last line of the film is, why spoil his dreams? They're such wonderful dreams. And it's so lifeless and really dull. And you can just almost feel like this character or the actress doesn't even believe what she's saying. It feels so forced. I really hate this voiceover. It's one of the worst. She does have a funny line where she says, yeah, we had to break the bad news to them that there was no nuclear holocaust. I thought that was kind of funny. And then we finally get to see the mom getting out of the bunker and enjoying the outdoors. And of course, Christopher Walken, like you said, the narcissist, how oblivious he is and how like rooted in his beliefs. He doesn't believe the war is actually over. When Brendan Fraser finally sits him down and tells him, he's like, yeah, those commies, they're brilliant. I bet they even asked for aid. And he's like, oh yeah, I think they did. And then researching this movie, I thought it was funny how it tied into Dave Foley on Kids in the Hall. He has a whole skit about communism that is just like this. That's like, oh yeah, you think communist is over? You think Russia's nobody to be afraid of? They're just acting like, they're pathetic and weak, but wrong. I thought this is really funny how it tied into Walken's character.
Again, I have to go with Walken's character here. The last shot of the film is him pacing in the yard, measuring with his steps how wide of a spot he needs for his new bunker. And I'm just thinking, yeah, dude, like that's right, man. Prep. Go ahead and prep. You need to. You were right before.
You were right.
They would have died, Jordan. Even though there was no nuclear war, had he not built the bunker and had he and Sally Field, not
Sally Field,
he and Sissy Spacek, had the two of them not gone down there, they would have died because the plane did crash into their home.
The surface levels were hot. Yeah.
Right. It did immediately incinerate the house, so it would have killed both of them and their unborn child had they not had the bunker to go down to. So his intuition, we need to build this bunker and get down there so we can be safe, was correct. Now, they didn't need to live down there for 35 years, but he was right with the bunker. So I'm glad he's planning ahead again. If something crazy happens, he's going to be ready. So I like that. And I like the beautiful moment where he is talking about, don't you miss the bunker, basically, to Sissy Spacek. I love that I called her Sally Field, and also that I said Spacey Sissek.
Spacey Sissek.
Again, another beautiful sky shot where he's like, it was fine in there, or something like that. And then they show his perspective where you just see him and basically the ground or the house behind him. But then they cut to a shot of her and the sky is just brilliant and beautiful behind her.
Right. Yeah. She's like, this is different. She's got her hands stretched out and just, finally I'm free. I love it. I love the mom character in this.
Those two moments, I mean, they didn't override the voiceover, but at least while she's giving the crappy voiceover, the other stuff that's going on with his parents is cool. But then again, you've made me invested in Fraser and Silverstone. Did they have their own place? I mean, I know they're going to get married because she has an engagement ring on, but what's going to happen? Are they getting married and they're going to live somewhere else? Are they going to go down to the bunker, which is still there? What's going to happen to them? Are they going to live with his parents? I wish there had been more closure there instead of the voiceover, which, as you said, not needed in the least. Not at all. I kind of wonder if that was a studio demand, because a lot of times that's what voiceovers come from.
I almost wonder if there are some deleted scenes here that do give more closure to their relationship. But this movie's already like almost 2 hours, or it is 2 hours at this point, right? So it almost does feel like a studio note where like, oh, we got to cut some stuff back and wrap things up real quick. Make sure this doesn't get too long. So then they just throw in this voiceover at the end to kind of like speed things up. That's how it feels to me. And yeah, I really feel like the ending is botched here. I definitely wanted to see more of a wrap up with their character and with their relationship. And like you said, with the dad character maybe coming around and maybe some more resolution with him and his wife as well. So, but I do love that last final shot, from the kind of aerial shot of him pacing around the backyard. That always stuck with me from the first time I watched it.
Yeah, I love it. I just, like you said, no voiceover, and they could have done really a Brendan Fraser voiceover where he's maybe just describing what he wants for his parents to the builders, because we know that he had all those stocks that his dad bought him back in the day in Apple and other things that are worth a ton of money now. So we know that he has money, and he could have just been talking to the builders about what he wanted for his parents, and a quick voiceover there as you see the house being built. And maybe there could just be a brief moment where we know Walken's a brilliant inventor with a brilliant mind, where maybe he does something sweet with that brilliant mind to bless his wife now that they're living on the surface again. Just maybe a quick 30-second moment like that.
Yeah, a sweet moment where he kind of like, I guess in a way sort of makes up for it, or like in a, small gesture, like he's moving in the right direction even.
Yes, there are no DVD extras for this, but like you said, there have to be deleted scenes somewhere that has all this stuff.
Yeah, something of this nature I feel like is out there and exists. But I like this task of imagining it at least and thinking of a better ending for this movie that I found really charming, really entertaining, just really sad that it kind of didn't nail the landing here at the end, but it's got some good stuff mixed in with the garbage voiceover.
Yes. What's your final score for this movie?
Man, so when I watched this a few months ago, I think it was the ending that just brought it so far down for me. I originally had given this just a 3 out of 5, and I was tempted here to go just a full 4 stars, but I couldn't quite do it, probably still because of that ending. So it was a weird score for me, but it's a 3.75, not quite strong enough to be a 4, but there's so much good stuff here. I just really love this movie.
Yeah, we're close to the same page. It's a 7 out of 10 for me. There's such good stuff. I mean, minor tweaks. This is an easy 8.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it, man. I was really afraid going into this. We were going to have to spar. I was going to have to punch you like Brendan Fraser punched Cliff in the face.
Well, we still have the punishment movie to talk about.
This is true.
But hey, Jordan, I did a movie connection.
You did a movie connection?
The movie just slapped me right in the face with it. Tommy Boy, we have the driving scene. They're driving along. The end of the world as we know it by REM comes on the radio. They try to sing it. Of course they can't because no one knows the words. I don't even think Michael Stipe knows the words to that song. Well, what happens when Brendan Fraser and Alicia Silverstone get in a car for the first time? They turn on the radio. End of the World as We Know It by REM is playing for about 10 seconds. So there you go.
Yeah, I love how she just changes the channel from that song too. It's just like, oh, let's find something else.
That was so 1995.
What, the fact that she changed it?
No, that's her saying that, Jordan, because the song's from...
Oh, I see. Yeah, it definitely feels like, oh, this is played out. Let me find something else, which is true to that moment, true to 99, where it's like, yeah, we're done with this song now. We can move on.
Yeah, put Smash Mouth on.
It's also funny, too, in context of this movie where it's the end of the world as I know it and I feel fine, because Christopher Walken thought it was the end of the world and there's just mutants up above ground. But Brendan Fraser comes to find out, oh, well, like everybody's actually okay up here. It's, we thought it was the end of the world, but it's fine.
Yes. Do you have a different connection? I'm sure you have a better one.
Nope, that's all I got. On the same page.
Now, Jordan, we finished Blast from the Past. Now I want you to imagine a future, Jordan. I want you to imagine a bright future just 5 months later in 1999. And in that future of August 1999, there exists a live action version of the 1960s cartoon Dudley Do-Right. Here's the weird thing. So the cartoon, it actually came on. We're talking about throwbacks, right? To the 50s and the 60s and the late 90s. First appearance of Dudley Do-Right was 1959, Jordan, in The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, which is the only time I've seen Dudley Do-Right. I did watch some Rocky and Bullwinkle as a kid when it was on TV and syndication. So I saw some Dudley Do-Right, but I can't remember any of it. Besides the girl getting tied to the train tracks, I just pretty much forgot all of it. How about you?
I remember watching Rocky and Bullwinkle growing up too in the 90s. I guess reruns that was it on Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon? I don't know where they showed it, but I remember it being kind of one of those things where it's just like, oh, it's on. I don't really find it that funny, but I'm just kind of stuck with it. So I'll watch it. It's mildly amusing, and Dudley Do-Right being thrown in there. Remember the train track thing. Remember Snidely, the villain that we have here, played by Alfred Molina, which is just like, what the hell? Why is Alfred Molina in this movie? I'm not quite sure. I think you had brought up his voice when we were talking about this, just his voice alone that he uses for Snidely. It's so over the top and ridiculous.
You know what was also ridiculous, Jordan? My massive failure when I said we were going to move ahead by 5 months. Jordan, this came out 6 months after Blast from the Past.
Oh, no.
I failed. We went from February to August. That's 6 months.
That's all right. Nobody's counting.
I must commit Filmshake seppuku. I'm sure I said that wrong. Seppuku.
Well, yeah, I'm just really curious. I feel like you might actually like this movie, so I'm really curious to hear your take on it.
All right, here's my take. So, I mean, the basic plot of this, what plot does exist? Brendan Fraser is Dudley Do-Right, who's a Canadian Mountie, just like the real Brendan Fraser's great-grandfather was. Pretty amazing there.
Weird.
Even though he's American, his great-grandfather was a Canadian Mountie. So he is this dim-witted Canadian Mountie. He's, like most Brendan Fraser characters, pretty sweet and good-natured, but also this one's very dumb. He's very dumb. His love interest is Nell, played by Sarah Jessica Parker. She's his love interest. I think in the cartoon she was more into the horse, which is named Horse, than she is Dudley Do-Right.
Was she into the horse in the cartoon? Like, romantically?
She just liked the horse. Like, she would give the horse kisses. It wasn't, like, weird or gross. It would be now if they did it. She'd be a furry. But it was just kind of cute then. Here, she's just kind of also into Snidely, who is their childhood friend. Snidely is Dudley's arch rival. But the thing here is, he's not totally evil. He's just kind of naughty. Like, he does a lot of bad schemes.
He's just naughty.
He's just naughty. So they were all childhood friends, and now they're all grown-ups. And Snidely is this criminal. He tricks people into thinking this area has gold. That really doesn't. He just sprinkles some gold in the river, basically so he can start this town and milk everyone who comes there out of their money. Even though there's not any gold there, he's getting all their cash as they look for gold. That's really just the loose plot of this movie, and Dudley has to figure it out and stop him. But I'm just going to say this, Jordan. This movie is not going to appeal to almost anyone. It flopped at the theater, and I understand why. It's got a low rating on IMDb, and I understand why. But I enjoyed the hell out of this movie, Jordan,
Really?
because it's a great example of smart dumb. This movie is dumb as hell. It is stupid. It is so stupid. It is just gag after stupid gag. But most of the gags, if you think about them, definitely require some intelligence to construct, Jordan. It's a lot like, and again, this is really specific, and not many people saw this because at the time he was not popular at all. Early Conan, the first Late Show episodes that Conan did, 1993, 94, 95, 96, where no one was watching him. No one was watching Conan back then. Just a few 100,000 people, and he was on so late. He was on at midnight, basically 11:30 to 12:30 if you're central time zoning it, and he just did the most bizarre, stupid, just totally stupid skits. The dumbest stuff. He used to do this skit on Thanksgiving. He would be doing his routine and someone would laugh really too loud and exaggerated. Finally, he'd stop his monologue and say, "Who's doing that?" And there would be a turkey in the audience. And it was a turkey who was purposely laughing too loud at his jokes so that Conan would not eat the turkey for Thanksgiving. Just an example of the jokes there would be that he would laugh too loud at Conan's joke and then say, "You're the rabbi, Barry Yuckstein, and you're circumcising me with laughter." Which is really stupid.
That's really dumb, but funny.
Not many people are going to find that funny.
Yeah.
But the people who do find that funny are going to piss themselves because they're laughing so hard. And that's me, Jordan. I need new shorts because
That's you in this movie?
I laughed my ass off this whole movie, man.
This whole movie?
Yes, the whole time.
I'll give you there's moments that, like, mostly towards the end that I thought were more amusing or that I laughed out loud with because they're just so stupid. And you know, I am a fan of smart dumb, and I'm a fan of just dumb humor in general. But man, for me, most of the jokes here fell horribly flat, and they were kind of painful at times. It's just like hard to watch. Just somebody trying to be funny, and it's just not funny. Just like, oh my gosh, like, and then you've got like multiple dance routines. It's just the filmmaking in general, I felt like was really kind of flat and uninteresting. It was like hard to get through.
Well, I'll just tell you, from the go, you get an animated short, which is calling back to Dudley Do-Right's origins, and it's a morality play. I thought that was funny.
That was probably the best part of this whole thing, was that little animated short, honestly.
Okay, good. I'm glad you dug that. And again, we have to mention, this is the same director's Blast from the Past, but the tone here is totally different outside of the throwback nature of the movie. But Jordan, as soon as they cut to the real movie and you start off with the kids whenever they're young, Snidely and Sarah Jessica Parker and Dudley Do-Right. Sorry, we got to call somebody by their real name. And you cut to the future. This movie had me at this moment. You have Brendan Fraser on the phone in his Mountie uniform, his full Mountie uniform, and he's ordering a pizza by phone, it sounds like. And he's being so anal and so over the top, so specific about his pizza and how he wants it and how he has to have it. And then he says, "Thanks, Mom. I love you too." Because he was talking to his mom, Jordan. And that's funny to me. I find that hilarious.
No. Man, nothing in this first part made me laugh, or I don't know, just it all fell flat. It was all just like, wow, this is bad. Like, what am I getting into? My wife, she was watching it with me, and Karis, she just had to leave the room. She's like, I don't think I can take this, man. And then I was like, all right, bring me a drink so I can get through this. So speaking of the champagne cocktails, now she brought me a cocktail and I started drinking that. And then I just fell asleep like halfway through and was like, oh no, this is too bad. I just got to turn this off. But I did finish it. And maybe in a better state of mind, it helped me out, because I did go back and watch the end. I did find at least 2, maybe 3 things funny in this movie. So it wasn't completely lost on me.
Okay, well, I'll just ask you some things that you, for the sake of time, if you thought certain things were funny or not. So did you like whenever he said, "This is Canada, things are real up here"? Did you like that?
No.
Okay. Did you like the tribe of Indians that were actually Brooklynites that talked in really thick Brooklyn accents?
No.
Did you like that they put on major Broadway productions in Native American costume, to which Sarah Jessica Parker gave rapturous applause and praise?
No.
Okay, I should mention, as I'm asking you these are all things I loved and laughed hysterically at.
I assume this, yeah.
Okay, so I guess we'll skip to the end, because I know you like parts there. Though I will mention that there is a part where they play, "I like bread and butter, I like toast and jam." They played a bunch of old songs like that I like, so there you're hitting my nostalgia right there, Jordan. Did you like at the end of the movie where we have the big action scene where Snidely has all these tanks and Dudley and his group have pretty much nothing to fight back with, and I think it was Dudley, someone says about the Brooklyn native, they call them Native North Americans at the end of the movie, which I thought was funny. He says, "They haven't faced this much resistance since their all-male revival of Little Women." Did you laugh at that?
I thought that was on the road to that was like, okay, I guess. But I'll tell you what I did laugh at, to spare you some time. Okay, the one line that I think will stick with me from this that I thought that was pretty funny is when Snidely's group, this whole action scene at the end, I like this whole action scene where the Indians and Dudley are fighting them with rocks, and Snidely is coming after them with all his goons and the machine guns, and they're getting hit by the rocks, and he says, "That's not fair. They've got rocks. All we have are these machine guns." I thought that was pretty good.
That was a great line. And I love that his sidekick there, he always says, "You the man, Whip."
Right. I love that actor. He's in a lot of other stuff too. He's just always really funny.
Yes. And I love whenever everything works out at the end and they have the little tacked on message, which feels strangely cynical, where he says, "Good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people."
Yeah, that did seem like strangely winking too. I thought that was pretty good. And when at the end, Dudley is riding the horse straight at the tanks, firing on him. I mean, Fraser can ride a freaking horse. I guess this was, after he made The Mummy, so he had all that great action experience. He does really good in this moment. And then the tanks are trying to go after him, but there's one on the left side, one on the right side, and then he rides between them, and then they fire at each other and blow each other up. And then at the end, Alfred Molina saying, "I've lost everything. Even the announcer is gone." And the announcer popping in, "No, I'm not. Someone's got to explain how the Mounties got here." I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, I love the self-awareness of this movie. Again, similar to Blast from the Past, I feel like you could watch this for 10 to 20 minutes and you're going to know, okay, I want to watch the rest of this or I'm turning this off. But the thing is, with Blast for the Past, I think 50 to 65% of people are going to say, I like this. I'll stick with this. With Dudley Do-Right, I think it's probably under 5% of people watching it are going to feel like I did.
Probably so.
It's really niche humor. I mean, extremely niche. You're either going to like this kind of humor or you're not, and you're probably not. I mean, this movie flopped again for a reason, because most people don't get this kind of thing. And this movie never for once takes itself seriously. There's not a single serious emotional beat in this entire film. It is totally ridiculous. It's just gag after gag, and if they're landing for you like they were for me, you're going to love this. If they're not, you're going to be like Jordan and get drunk and fall asleep. So those are the only two paths here.
Were you into all the times he was like kicking his feet up on the desk at the beginning and he kept falling down?
Yeah, it was so stupid. It was so stupid. I loved it.
I just felt like, okay, it's obviously trying to be stupid funny, but in moments like that where it just kind of fell flat, no pun intended, because it's just like doing the same thing over and over again. Like when you can feel a movie reaching for a laugh and it not eliciting a laugh for me, I'm like, that is the worst kind of failure for a comedy.
Ouch, that's mean. Hey.
Sorry, Dudley. You just didn't do it right.
My final note, because you always find reviews for movies like this for every movie that exists that had a major release. There's always someone that says that they watched it with their dad or their mom together the first time and loved it and always watched it regularly. So I just wrote, somebody somewhere loves this movie with their dad and he died. And now they're writing a review for it and giving it an 8 out of 10. And my dad is still alive and we've never watched this together. But part of me wonders, since we have a pretty similar sense of humor, if he and I would have watched this at some point, maybe even my brother too, and just died of laughter. And then we would have both been dead.
Died of laughter, literally. I don't know. Maybe we should get together and watch this movie and that'll help me out.
Yeah.
Just like hearing your laughter. Because I feel like we went and saw The Dead Don't Die in theater, and that's another movie, Jim Jarmusch, I love, but it has very specific type of humor. I feel like nobody else in the theater was laughing, but you were dying laughing, and that just helped me get into it all the more. So maybe it was something like this that would help. Just like, okay, I've seen this once. I know it's stupid. It doesn't take itself seriously. Let me find somebody else who enjoys this, and that might help elevate it, I guess.
I think it would, because I would definitely watch this again. I give it a 6 out of 10, actually. I'll almost double the IMDb score. How about you?
2 out of 5. that tank explosion was pretty cool.
Dude,
I'll give it that.
Watching this, I knew if you didn't like anything in this, you at least liked those explosions at the end because they were really well lit. I thought the cinematography for this movie was pretty good by Donald E. Thorin. I thought he did a pretty good job. He did An Officer and a Gentleman. Jordan, he did some major movies.
How far they fall.
He did Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls.
Yeah, he had the nature background to go with the ending battle shots, I guess.
There you go.
The ending with the horse, well, just the fact that his horse is named Horse, this is kind of amusing. But then the horse shows back up at the end, and then when they're doing the little like shrinking iris fade to black kind of old-timey movie thing, the horse gets his mouth stuck in the hole like when it's shrinking to black. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, the horse's return is glorious when it's on that hill. It actually, the aesthetic of it, I thought was very 1999 because it's very similar to shots of battle tanks coming over the hill, green hills in the Phantom Menace earlier that year. So I don't know, it had 99 vibes for me too. This reminds me actually of whenever my best friend in high school, Robbie, worked at TGI Fridays, and they always had endorsements with, it's like Happy Meals get the big movies, right? And then Burger King would get the smaller ones, and then Taco Bell and Wendy's. He worked at TGI Fridays, so they would get a movie like this, and that would be like their whole summer endorsement would be with Rocky and Bullwinkle the movie, or
Dudley Do-Right.
Dudley Do-Right.
Right. I'm glad you enjoyed it, friend.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I appreciate it.
At least somebody loves it. You might be one of the few people in the world.
Right.
And I wanted to ask you, is this a contrarian thing for you, Nick? You're the typical contrarian where you're like, if everybody loves the thing, I'm going to hate it. If everyone hates the thing, I'm going to love it. Does that play into your feelings for this movie at all? where you feel like I'm challenged to love it?
No.
Just hits you on the right wavelength, I guess.
It did. I didn't realize that this movie was as hated as it was till afterward. I was laughing so much. I thought maybe there would be like a cult following for it of other people who thought it was funny. And I mean, dude, Blast from the Past, my opinion of, it's pretty good. It's all right. That's pretty much the general opinion, right?
Yeah.
I'm not Armand Whiting it all the time. That's an obscure reference for everyone.
I'm glad you're enjoying it on a pure level then.
There you go. And with that Armand White reference out of the way, it's time for our trivia battle.
Hold it! Pop quiz, hot shot.
This is our patron pick from Miss Tanya Vize. And so similar to last episode where I recruited our patron to give us the trivia battle questions, I have once again recruited a patron to give us trivia battle questions. Since we're talking about a blast from the past and throwbacks, and I know Miss Vize is a huge fan of classic movies, I asked her to come up with some questions for you, Nick, all about various classic movies from the 50s and even earlier.
You bum. First of all, you had a book, so you wouldn't have to write trivia questions. Then you used up all of those. I got them all right the first time, then you asked them to me again, and I got them all right the second time. So now you're like, what can I do to get out of writing questions now? I know I'll get our patrons to write them for me.
What can I say, Do-Right? I'm just an evil bastard.
That was pretty good. Man, Alfred Molina, you could have put him out of a job, dude. I mean, he's pretty good, but...
I'm surprised he wasn't out of a job after that movie.
Yeah, he did Spider-Man 2 just 5 years later.
Such a weird career. So yeah, speaking of Boogie Nights with the production design on Blast from the Past, then he does Dudley Do-Right.
Yeah. Okay, well, I took a similar tack, Jordan. A very similar tack.
All right.
Because Blast from the Past starts in 1962. So all of my questions revolve around some of the movies from the top 10 highest grossing films of 1962.
All right. Got some classic movie trivia here.
If you've listened to a 2-hour episode on Blast from the Past to this point, let's see who can win this trivia battle.
All right. So first question from Miss Vize. From the 1953 film From Here to Eternity, who was Deborah Carr's partner in the steamy beach scene?
Burt Lancaster.
Probably be an easy one for you. There you go.
All right.
All right. What's your first question?
The box office champ for 1962 was a massive World War II film starring John Wayne, along with a massive armada of movie stars. Was this film A, The Longest Day, B, The Guns of Navarone, C, Where Eagles Dare, or D, The Great Escape?
Was it The Longest Day?
Correctamundo.
All right.
These aren't hard. I want you to try to win without a tie this time. Mostly because I'm making fun of you for being lazy about writing your questions, but I didn't come up with a punishment movie and you did, so...
So hopefully I win.
Right.
It'll all work out. Okay, well, second question. In the 1958 film Indiscreet with Cary Grant, have you seen this?
No.
Okay. Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman. How did Ingrid Bergman react when he told her he'd lied to her about being married? Was his quote, A, this is a quote from her, A, how dare he make love to me and not be a married man? B, why do men always have to tell such wonderful lies? C, I find your ways quite indiscreet. Or D, and his epitaph will read, he died of her broken heart.
Man, those are all very strong. I'm going to guess B.
Ooh, it was A. How dare he make love to me and not be a married man?
I should have guessed that one.
That'll probably be the hardest question I ask you.
Well, my next question's not hard at all. The second place champ for the year, I should add, 1962, Murderer's Row of films that year. Pretty crazy. The second place champ of the box office was the epic Best Picture winning Lawrence of Arabia, directed by David Lean, who starred as the titular character. Was it A, Peter O'Toole? B,
Peter O'Toole.
Yes, that's correct. Good job, Jordan.
Thank you, sir. I do better with the classic trivia, I think, than anything else.
Hey, I think you just won. You got 2 right. I missed 1. I think you did it. I think that's it.
Did I do it?
Yeah, I think you just did it.
I finally won! Oh my God!
I mean, you had to get your mother-in-law to help you, but you did it.
I feel like I need to give an award speech here or something. They love me. They really love me.
Only one of my questions was hard. I think I'm going to port that over to the next episode. The other two are so easy.
Fair play. Good game. All right, so our next episode is going to be with a guest, good friend of the show, Doug McCambridge from Good Times, Great Movies. And we had him on our Hot Shots episode, so we've got to bring him back. What is this, the 25th anniversary?
It's the 30th anniversary, Jordan.
30th anniversary of Hot Shots Part 2.
It came out in May of 1993.
There we go. Hot Shots Part 2, the sequel, staple of childhood, iconic imagery in this film. Charlie Sheen, fun stuff. I know he's a big Charlie Sheen fan. So, for the Punishment movie, and I want to say I might have mentioned this like way back on the show and had saw this movie and kind of want to see it myself. Not sure how much of a punishment it will be. It's got a 5.9 out of 10 on IMDb. This is The Wraith from 1986. Have you seen or heard of The Wraith, Nick?
So I looked at Charlie Sheen films and saw The Wraith listed, and I remember you mentioning it, and I thought, Jordan is probably going to assign this as the punishment, and I want to watch it. I have to make sure that my questions are really easy, and my plan worked.
Oh, nice. So you do want to watch this?
I do, yeah. I've been meaning to watch it for a long time.
I want to watch this, too. I've been meaning to watch it as well. So basically, in a small town in Arizona, a mysterious man/spirit descends from the sky and manifests in a sports car and targets a local violent road racing gang of motorheads headed by a ruthless bully who'll do anything to get what he wants. So, yeah, crazy 80s premise. This looks really ridiculous and fun, maybe terrible in some ways, but that's all fun too. So, Charlie Sheen in the 80s and then Charlie Sheen in the 90s on our next episode.
Yes, I'm really psyched about the car from this movie. The Dodge M4S Turbo Interceptor that they use in this film, I was like, look really cool. So even if the film sucks and I end up not liking it, I know I'm going to like looking at the car.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to enjoy this. If not on like a, great movie, but just kind of like cheeseball 80s, kind of like Solar Babies level.
Yes, and it has Sherilyn Fenn from Twin Peaks in it too, which is another reason I've always wanted to see it.
Oh, Randy Quaid is in this as well. So looking forward to this. It'd be fun to have Doug back on the show. Maybe he can help me out next time for the trivia battle and I can win again and break my losing streak finally.
Right, we need to do Phone a Doug where only you can phone him and infinite times.
Yes, Doug will just play for me, basically just like I'm asking all these patrons to write the questions for me. We'll just have him write the questions and he'll write your questions too, and then he'll just know everything. And
Doug is a patron of our show, so that would be keeping in line with what's happened over the past 2 episodes.
Yeah. But I'm saying he'll write my questions and your questions, and then he'll play for me and just win automatically.
Because he knows all the answers. Brilliant. That sounds like a Jordan Courtney scheme. Snidely Courtney. That's why you can do that voice so well.
I'm really Alfred Molina in spirit.
That's right. Tie me to the tracks and take me out of this episode, Jordan.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed our show. We'll catch you next time on Dudley Do-Right. All right, yeah, we'll catch you next time for more Filmshake.
Take it easy.
No one likes us. I don't know why. We may not be perfect, but heaven knows we try. But all around, even our old friends put us down. Let's drop the big one and see what happens. We give them money, but are they grateful? No, they're spiteful and they're hateful. They don't respect us, so let's surprise them. We'll drop the big one.
Hey, it says you're in Las Vegas.
I know, my phone died. I'm calling you from the Filmshake Google Voice.
You were on Twitter too long today, weren't you?
Yeah.
You killed it.
I should have plugged my phone in, my bad.
So let's drop the big one now. Let's drop the